We are pleased to have exhorting and giving us the word of exhortation this morning, Brother Ivan Ricks. His title is Soldiers of Israel, and as he has no scripture reading at the moment, please give your attention to Brother Ivan.
Good morning. You know, it's amazing as I look out here, it feels like that the building should be tipped back in that direction because of all the crowd on the back. Title was, or is, Soldiers of Israel. I'm sure you're all aware that there were lots of soldiers in Israel because there was plenty of occasions where soldiers were of necessity. But we're going to talk about mostly just a couple today. One would be David's close friend, his confidant, protector, man willing to risk his own life to protect his friend. And then there was another, David's battlefield commander. He was also a protector, also willing to risk his life for David's protection. Probably figured him out at this point. Jonathan was the firstborn son of Israel's King Saul, and he's introduced only as a leader. And that's found in 1 Samuel 13. And then later, he's in that same chapter, he's barely mentioned, but he is then mentioned as being the son of Saul. And it's noted that Jonathan, at this point, is a commander of 1,000 soldiers. By now, obviously, he's an adult, apparently very seasoned in the military, and he's heir, as being the firstborn, heir to the throne of Israel. Jonathan was truly a courageous man, full of determination. And unlike his father, the king, he was reliant on the Lord throughout his life. Jonathan, we find, was a proper soldier in his own right. He was highly esteemed by those men that he led. And these character traits are readily noted when Jonathan relies on the Lord, when he and just his armor bearer attacked an entire Philistine garrison. So Jonathan bravely encouraged Saul and all those with him to join in the battle after they had routed this garrison, just the two of them. And then they led to Israel's victory. 1 Samuel 23 says, "So the Lord saved Israel that day." Well, there's no record of any interaction between he and David until the account of Goliath. So obviously the two, David and Jonathan, were not really close in age, although Jonathan probably was a young man at the time, David a teenager. But possibly David already knew Jonathan, or at least he had some contact with him, particularly as he had become, David that is, had become Saul's armor bearer. That's found in chapter 16:21. In any case, It stated that, quote, "The soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as himself." Now consider Jonathan's faith. As we noted earlier, we could find that many soldiers probably would have been stationed in a Philistine garrison, but the odds were way out of whack against Jonathan, that armor bearer. But probably Jonathan had read the law. And in the law from Leviticus 26:8, it says, "If you walk in my statutes, you will chase your enemies. 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000. Your enemies will fall before you." Even though odds were against him, he knew that with God with him, he definitely could defeat the enemy. Likewise, David, when going to battle against the giant, told the king, quote, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." David also said to Goliath, quote, "I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of armies of Israel. This day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands." Tremendous faith. Then David's bravery, his courage, and recognition of his God's salvation would have moved Jonathan. They had much in common. Now we'll fast forward just a little bit. David, even though he becomes the son-in-law of the king, and he becomes a captain in the king's army. He has to fight Israel's enemies, but he also finds that he has to avoid King Saul. Why? King Saul wants him dead. David has about 600 men that are totally loyal to him at this time. And he's run off trying to escape Saul. He's in the wilderness of Ziph, dodging Saul, who had a much larger force. It indicates that over 2,000. And then we're introduced to Abishai. Quote, "Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother." When David becomes king, we can read about a list of his mighty men. And these were among the most loyal. There were 600 loyal. Certainly the name of Zeruiah were fierce, courageous fighters. And when David asked for a volunteer to stealthily venture into Saul's camp, Abishai was quick to answer. He was also quick to recommend King Saul's demise because of opportunity. But that was not to be the case. Nor, after this, would David ever see Saul again. So, talk about this other soldier, Joab. While he was likely among the 600, he's not actually introduced until David has been made king in Judah. And that intro has Joab and David's servants going out to meet Abner. Abner is the King Saul's general. Now, Abner had made Saul's son Ishbosheth. This was after the death of Saul. He made him king of Israel. And he wanted a contest of, we'll call them gladiators, maybe something similar to a jousting match. between Judah and the other tribes of Israel. It would appear from the context of 2 Samuel 2 that Joab is the de facto leader in David's men, since Abner addresses Joab directly. And one wonders about Joab's feelings about Abner at this time, recalling David's last meeting with Saul when David derided and embarrassed Abner, saying, quote, "Why have you not guarded your lord the king? This thing you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you must die, because you did not guard your Lord, the Lord's anointed." Well, David goes on to tell Saul, "Perhaps other men have stirred you up against me." Could one of those other men be Abner? Possibly all those things rattled around inside Joab's head as he gets ready for this jousting. It's interesting that it was Abner that, as we quoted, had made Ishbosheth king, and that's found in 2 Samuel 2. Abner was also curiously absent from the battle at Mount Gilboa. So here we have these two guys setting up this deadly contest. As you find if you would read the chapter, a lot more than jousting, they're playing with swords and playing deadly. After it's over, 360 of Abner's soldiers are dead. 20 of Joab's casualties. In the next chapter, Abner, upset with Ishbosheth's accusations, he then threatens rebellion. Then he sends a message to David that he, Abner, can then bring the rest of Israel over. And one thing Abner does know, as did Saul, that it was the intent of the Lord to, quote, have David save Israel from the hand of the Philistines and from the hand of their other enemies. Meanwhile, Joab and all the army are out fighting one of Judah's enemies quite successfully. David has entertained Abner, and then he sent him away to gather Israel. Joab's response, we'll look that one up. That's in 2 Samuel 3. Second Samuel 3, verse 27, it says, when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into the middle of the gate to speak with him privately. And there he struck him in the belly. This was with a sword, so that he died on account of the blood of Asahel, his brother, whom Abner had personally slain during the jousting. We now find in Joab not only a quite skillful warrior and leader, but a cunning assassin. Well, the events that follow unite all of Israel with Judah, David, and Jonathan. Saul and Joab, all warriors, but a comparison is like apples and oranges. Jonathan and David were both men of faith. Both looked to God as their guides and protection. And the similarities between Saul and Joab are striking as well. Both these were rash. Each looked to his own bravado to win the moment. And while aware of God's presence, neither felt the need to seek God's support. On numerous occasions, Saul attempted to either personally kill David or have the Philistines do it. or somebody in the army. At one time, he even told Jonathan, quote, to put David to death. Now, we could think about Jonathan maybe musing at the moment. David is becoming very powerful, perhaps he's thinking. He's a champion of the people. Chances are he'll take my father's place instead of me. Certainly, Jonathan was aware of Samuel's curse on Saul, and he did accept the decision that had been made there by the Lord. Truly, Jonathan was the best friends with one that human nature would have considered his worst rival. In all this, Jonathan showed only true loyalty to that friend, as well as to God, who had rejected Saul and given the kingdom to his neighbor, David. And just as David would not harm God's anointed, at that time Saul, Jonathan knew he had to keep a wary eye on his father. Take a look at Jonathan's last words. We'll go back to 1 Samuel 23. 1 Samuel 23, yeah. Beginning at verse 15, we read, Now David becomes aware that Saul has come out to seek his life while David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horesh. And Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David at Horesh and encouraged him in God. Thus he said to him, Do not be afraid, because the hand of Saul my father will not find you, and you will be king over Israel, and I will be next to you, and Saul my father knows that also. No other such abiding friendship is found in Scripture, unless perhaps between Christ and his disciples. We can read from John 17:12, quote, I have guarded them, and not one of them, the disciples, has been lost except the son of destruction. Both Jonathan and David's continued loyalty to the king was one of loyalty to God. Both knew that David would one day be the king in Israel. But the method and the time was under God's control. Among David's final words to Saul, and I'm quoting, I refuse to stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. Behold, as your life was highly valued in my sight this day, so may my life be highly valued in the sight of the Lord, and may he deliver me from all distress. Back to Joab. From the beginning, it's apparent that Joab looked to his own wiles for his success, not for the Lord. Much as Saul did not seek the Lord either. Both were warriors to the end, enjoying the excitement, we could say, of the battle. While David had great loyalty towards Saul, the Lord's anointed, there was a different attachment toward Joab. And while David took great pains to let Israel show he had nothing to do with and did not condone the murder of Abner, yet Joab was allowed privilege in the army. In fact, we might next read of Joab's elevation to chief and commander after he was the first over the wall in Jebus. And for at least 33 years, Joab led Israel's army. He was truly a shrewd tactician. He was a resourceful general, crushing the Philistines, the Syrians, Moab, and Edom. The army was actually sometimes split into three parts. Joab led a third, Abishai led a third, and David led a third. But then in 2 Samuel 2, quoting, when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab to besiege Rabbah. And David stayed in Jerusalem. Now Joab's in charge of this siege. So when David wants one of his mighty men back in Jerusalem, the communication would go to Joab. And we know what transpired with David, Bathsheba, and Uriah. But Joab is an important player in the scenario. So much so that likely David's reference to him in 2 Kings 2 comes from this. So let's play this out. David commented to the people at Abner's funeral that, quote, the sons of Zeruiah are difficult for me, would be including Joab. But both were outstanding military leaders, as we already noted. Both those sons, including Abishai, were ready, if not eager, for the fight. Both had no compunction about killing on a personal basis. And both had been with David since Saul sought to kill him. Now, regarding Joab, we could say that he was intensely loyal to David. Now, David, Joab away, the army away. He's intent on doing a terrible thing. He calls on Joab to do the dirty work. Make it look like Uriah was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So likely others that were with him died right along with Uriah. So there was more than one murder involved here. At this point, Joab sends word to David that Uriah, the king's servant, was dead. Until the Lord revealed the deed to Nathan, nobody else knew about it except Joab. Perhaps, there's the word perhaps, now Joab becomes cocky. Maybe more than that. The war with Ammon continues for months, to the point that Joab ultimately sends word to David that Rabbah would soon fall. And I'm intrigued about his choice of words. Here in chapter 12, it says, now therefore gather the rest of the people together and camp against the city and capture it, lest I capture the city myself and it be named after me. Maybe this is extreme loyalty, maybe self-effacement on Joab's part. But to me, it sounds like a taunt, maybe even a demand. David, you got to be here. Joab was not above deceit to accomplish any objective he may have. 14th chapter of 2 Samuel has him sending a woman to the king with a sad story which would coax David into returning his exiled son Absalom. It worked. But somehow, he recognized, David did, that, quote, the hand of Joab was involved in all this. Later, after David allowed Absalom to return, he would not see him for 2 years. That is, until Joab went to David on Absalom's behalf. It would appear that no one was as close or had the ear of the king like Joab. And then when Absalom rebels, even though Abishai is with David, Joab is nowhere mentioned. It would appear that the rebel is taking over the kingdom. And here we see Absalom placing Joab's cousin, a man named Amasa, over his army. And due to the great council, Hushai, David was able to regroup again with Joab and Abishai to defeat the army of Absalom. Knowing Joab, David commanded that they now deal gently with my son Absalom for my sake. Well, with the battle lost, Absalom gets separated. Maybe he is running away. He gets separated from his forces. He ends up caught in the branches of a tree. Quote, deal gently was not a part of Joab's demeanor. Even though he was reminded by one of David's other soldiers, Joab personally dispatched the defenseless usurper. Well, how much power did Joab really have? He next upbraids David for his personal behavior regarding his son's demise. He even threatens the king, quoting, go out and encourage your men. This is Joab speaking. Go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that you had come upon you from your youth up until right now. The record indicates that David did, he was instructed. But then David, assured the Israelites that followed Absalom that by installing Amasa as chief commander, that would bring them to David. Well, it turns out Amasa was not the man for the job. He was slow to handle an uprising, so David then sent Joab. And when Amasa finally arrived to join up, Joab dispatched Amasa. One really wonders of his motives. Does he feel that David is making mistakes, that he must be corrected? Or is he simply eliminating a rival? Joab would continue as the commander, and we read from chapter 20, verse 23, quote, now Joab was over the whole army of Israel. Once again. One more incident in Joab's career was noted in the last chapter. It had to do with a census. And David asked Joab to muster all the people by tribe. But Joab says that this is not a good thing to do. The Lord would not expect you to do this. And certainly Joab proved to be right, as later David repented from having done that. Unfortunately, there were over 70,000 in Israel who died as a result of this disobedience on David's part. So no more is said of Joab until David's reign ends. Solomon is made king. Noted before, David tells Solomon that he should know what to do about Joab because of what he did to me and the two other commanders of Israel, Abner and Amasa. And what he did to me was all about Joab's character. Treachery in spite of David's requests, orders, expectations. There was no forgiving, no mercy to those who appear to lack loyalty. And as we compare Jonathan with Joab, we see the spiritual versus the human aspect here. Consider Paul's words in Romans 8, quoting, "For those who are according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who are according to the Spirit set their minds on things of the Spirit." Saul and Joab sought all their answers through the sword, while Jonathan and David found their answers through God. Quoting, "Because the mind set on the flesh is hostile towards God, and those who are in the flesh cannot please God. So then, brothers, we are under obligation," these are the words of Paul, "not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For all who are being led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God." Thank you.